A sell-off in bonds is pushing the U.S. 30-year Treasury yield near 5% amid concerns about the U.S. fiscal outlook. President Trump is cranking up the pressure on divided House Republicans to pass a tax bill that would add roughly $3.8 trillion to the national debt, according to an analysis released Tuesday by the Congressional Budget Office. Heather Boushey, who served on President Joe Biden's Council of Economic Advisors, joins us now. Heather, good to have you here with us. Just take us into your own analysis that you've been able to run on what has been talked about in everything from budget reconciliation from this administration to Big Beautiful Bill, and how all of these things would play out over the longer run.
Well, listen, this is not a great bill for the long run for the U.S. economy, let alone the short run. I mean, here's the basic facts about it. This is a massive tax cut for those at the very top of the income distribution, while not giving a lot to those at the bottom, and in fact taking from them in terms of severe cutbacks to health insurance, access to health insurance, and nutritional support for low-income families. This is going to lead to higher costs for families across the income spectrum. That's going to particularly hard hit lower income families, and all of this so that billionaires can get a tax cut. At a moment when I think all of America is scratching their head and saying, why? Why do the richest people need all of this money and starving our communities of the things that they need to thrive, both as communities, but also in terms of their local economies? You know, making energy more expensive, making healthcare more expensive, making it harder to access food. None of this is going to lead to stronger local economic development. In fact, it's going to make everything just that much more challenging. And let me note one more thing that I think is getting lost in the details. That, so this is a massive tax cut for those at the top. It's going to have repercussions for states who are now going to be left holding the bag for many of these costs. When folks get kicked off Medicaid, when they don't have enough to eat, state governments and localities are going to also have to step up. So all those other things that states are spending on now, like education, are going to get hard hit by these cuts. So we're starving our future, literally, and none of that is going to lead to the kind of strong and sustainable economic growth that Americans really deserve and want to see.
Heather, it's a reminder of the importance of local elections. If you're in New York City, that mayoral race coming up here, but I want to stick to federal. The president had something interesting to say with regards to federal spending this week. Let's take a listen.
I'm a fiscal hawk. I'm a bigger fiscal hawk. There's nobody like me as a fiscal hawk.
Massey said it adds more deficit than Biden did, and this bill kind of...
Because we have to fix the country.
Heather, help me square this with what you are saying. You are talking to me about the amount of spending happening in this bill. The president says he's a fiscal hawk. Which is it?
I am sorry, Mads. That is literally laughable. This piece of legislation is the opposite of a fiscal hawk. We are going to spend trillions of dollars on tax cuts at the top. That's going to add to our deficit. The congressional budget estimates that this could be around $4 trillion of increased deficit spending. That is not fiscal hawkery in any way, shape, or form. And all for what? It is not for investing the things that matter. It's not for investing in ways that are going to benefit our economy. It's just a massive giveaway to the top. So the idea that he would call himself a fiscal hawk is I mean, again, quite frankly, it's laughable, but it's disturbing when you combine that with the other things that the president has said. He doesn't care if there's a recession. We'll get through it. But he's going to be starving the government of the capacity to help us weather a future recession. He doesn't care whether or not kids have access to toys next Christmas. Children don't deserve a lot of dolls. I mean, this is all a real sense, a lack of a sense of caring about the economic circumstances of millions of American families.
Heather, though, I am hearing from, and I talked to a lot of my sources on Wall Street that are bullish about these tax cuts, about a refueling of consumer spending, that it's going to delete the hit from tariff policy. Is there any chance that there's a growth narrative to come from this tax bill that we're ignoring in the conversation right now?
Well, I mean, let's take this with a grain of salt. Many of those folks on Wall Street will directly be beneficiaries. Their incomes will go up, so maybe that will affect their spending. Certainly, they will be able to afford more. But in terms of consumers around the country, in terms of low and moderate income families and rural parts of the country and in places that are not on Wall Street, they're going to be strapped for money. They're going to receive fewer benefits. They are not going to be receiving big tax cuts, and things are going to be more expensive for them. Everything from how much they have to spend on healthcare, because again, state governments are going to be starved. They're not going to be able to spend as much, to how much they have to spend on education, how much they have to spend on energy, on top of the goods that will be more expensive because of the tariffs. So this is really, this might be good, again, for some folks at the top of the income spectrum, and that's, you know, that's the reality of the situation, but this isn't good for America.
Heather, just while we have you, the 30-year, especially as we're continuing to watch the bond market on the side of our screen here, our viewers, where the bond market sell off after the Moody's downgrade and that going to AA from AAA, that had an impact on the bond market. And as we're thinking about what that carries through to housing affordability, what is your assessment for the long term and the prospect for us to get out of an affordability crisis that we've already been in?
Listen, there is not good news here, and that is why we've seen consumer sentiment drop for many months in a row. People are very worried. You know, interest rates go up, that's going to make it harder for families to afford a home. You know, the Federal Reserve is concerned that we're going to see stagflation, that it will be the combination of higher costs for families on top of higher unemployment, that might be in our future. None of this will make it easier for families to afford a home, let alone other big ticket items. And all of that in a consumer-driven economy is going to create challenges. And again, none of this is going to create the kinds of good jobs that people need to see in their communities that can then drive that consumer spending, that can drive that economic security that families need and want. You know, the federal government has taken a chainsaw to all of the other things that could have made investment that much more profitable for communities around the country. So the long-term forecast doesn't look good. It's looking increasingly uncertain, you know, in terms of how this plays out. But I will say, but part of my uncertainty is Congress has the ability to reverse course.
Yeah.
They have the ability to not pass this legislation, and that would be really good for the economy. And I think that's what the bond market is saying right now. Whoa, let's not go down this path.
Heather, good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for taking some time.
Thank you.